My upbringing took a sharp turn from the very beginning, as my parents, facing financial constraints and harboring disappointment over my gender, decided to put me up for adoption when I was just a child. Growing up in a modest household with two older sisters, life was far from idyllic. We resided in a quaint ancestral home in a small town, relying on the support of my grandparents' farm for a significant portion of our sustenance. My father, a truck driver, was often away, returning home every few days, while my mother worked as a waitress. Being the unplanned third child, I discovered the unwelcome circumstances of my arrival as I matured. My parents had initially contemplated getting rid of me, but medical concerns dissuaded them. Moreover, my mother's desire for another daughter led to disappointment when I, a boy, arrived. Growing up, my small-town existence became colored by the embarrassment of being dressed in my sister's discarded clothes, a consequence of my mother's practicality in reusing outfits. School became a challenging environment, where I faced ridicule for wearing a girl's uniform and sporting long hair. Complaints only resulted in punishment from my mother. As I navigated childhood, I absorbed a constant stream of abuse and harsh words from my parents. My father's sporadic presence offered little solace, as he fluctuated between a neutral stance and moments of cruelty akin to my mother. My resentment grew as I realized my sisters consistently received the best while I got their leftovers. Rebellion became my coping mechanism, a response to the injustices I perceived. I wasn't a saintly child. I directed my frustration towards my parents, holding them responsible for my misery. Grounded and left to fend for myself, I faced the struggles of a 6-year-old grappling with an unjust reality. A pivotal moment occurred when severe bullying in the playground pushed me to the brink. Upon discovering my sister's new holiday clothes, I succumbed to a fit of frustration, cutting them into confetti. While I regret my actions, they stemmed from a place of pain rather than malice. Instead of understanding my turmoil, my parents deemed it a sin deserving the harshest punishment. They decided to put me up for adoption. Despite waiting for a month, no one stepped forward to take me in. The frustration that followed was directed at me, reinforcing the narrative of my perceived worthlessness. In the midst of it all, I overheard my mother expressing how unwanted I was, further deepening the wounds of rejection. I often find myself pondering the wish that I had undergone a gender check, a step that might have spared me from being brought into a world where my parents harbored such intense hatred for me. It's disheartening to bear the weight of their disdain, especially for a reason beyond my control. After a considerable period with no takers for my adoption, my parents began discussing the situation with friends and relatives. Dad happened to know someone in the neighboring town, a man running a food van with his wife. Though they were economically less fortunate than us, their desire for a child had remained unfulfilled for over a decade. Dad approached them, and without hesitation, they agreed to adopt me. The moment Dad broke this news to Mom and my sisters is etched in my memory. Their joy at the prospect of getting rid of me was palpable. Dad, however, provided a disclaimer about their financial limitations, suggesting that I might not be able to attend school. Mom, nonchalant, dismissed it, urging Dad to drop me off the next day. I stood at the corner, holding the curtain, torn between my disdain for my family and the fear and hurt of leaving them. Tears welled up, but I kept them silent. The excitement of my family overshadowed my presence. When Dad finally noticed my tears, he offered a comforting pat on my back, instructing me to pack my belongings as we would leave for my new family the next morning. Though my heart screamed, the cries went unnoticed. I packed, hoping my new family would be kinder. The next day, Dad drove me to the neighboring town. The emotions during that journey remain a blur, a numbness that enveloped me. My new family, indeed financially modest, had a tiny house with one room. They had converted a storehouse into my living space. It was small, but at least I had a room, a luxury I never enjoyed before. My belongings found a home in a tiny closet at the corner. My new parents, Mary and John, greeted me with warmth and affection, qualities unfamiliar to me, coming from a disturbed household. Doubts lingered, and I resisted getting attached, fearing another abandonment. It took months for me to realize that their love was genuine. Despite discontinuing school that year due to the mid-session move, they promised to enroll me the following year. Witnessing their relentless efforts to save money for my education endeared them to me. In time, I reciprocated their love. My adoption, initially viewed as a curse, turned out to be a blessing. My biological parents never reappeared, allowing me to embrace my true identity as a boy. Mary and John, diligent and hardworking, devoted 14 to 16 hours a day to their food truck, located just outside their modest apartment. During the times when John and Mary were engrossed in their work, I wasn't left to fend for myself. Through my bedroom window, I had a clear view of their activities. Gradually, I found myself spending my days on the food truck, lending a hand wherever I could. When I entered school, my focus shifted to studies, yet I continued aiding them with chores during my free moments. By the age of 10, I was assisting John at the cash counter, showcasing an early proficiency in calculations. Business and accounting became familiar territories for me. Post-high school, a burning desire to run their business full-time emerged within me. However, both John and Mary insisted that I complete my college education first. They generously funded my studies, recognizing the need for formal education. As they aged and grew frail, I yearned to assume their responsibilities as they had done for me. Still, they reassured me they could manage for a few more years and urged me to pursue higher education. My college focus was on business and accounting, driven by my ultimate aspiration to become an entrepreneur. Graduation day marked a pinnacle of joy, with John and Mary celebrating as if over the moon. Despite inviting my biological parents to the convocation, they failed to attend. Post-college, my eagerness to take over the food van and allow John and Mary to retire clashed with their plans for me. Accumulating substantial savings, they handed it over to me, encouraging me to start my own business. Overwhelmed by their gesture, I hesitated to blindly spend the money. Drawing upon my business acumen, I scouted for a struggling local eatery in a prime location. After numerous rejections, I secured a lease on a profit-sharing model. Starting from scratch, I revamped the place and menu to cater to the tastes of millennials and Gen Z. By providing exceptional services, sales soared, yielding a twofold profit on the initial investment within a year. 4 years into this venture, I now proudly oversee 3 successful capes in town. I upgraded John and Mary to a better apartment while securing a modest place for myself. Despite urging them to retire the food truck for their happiness, they insisted on continuing. Leaving their house with a suitcase, I never envisioned myself as a college graduate. Yet here I am, running flourishing restaurant chains in town. Fast forward to last month, a routine day at work turned extraordinary when I spotted a familiar face at the cash counter of one of my restaurants. It felt like encountering a ghost. My biological father, absent for almost 2 decades. Despite the presence of customers, I said nothing, leading him to a quiet corner. His appearance stirred up the haunting memories of my tumultuous childhood. The detailed account of my past wouldn't have unfolded if my biological parents hadn't reappeared in my life. He expressed immense happiness and pride in witnessing my success, leaving me speechless and numb. According to him, he had met John, who shared the news of my prosperous venture while passing by. He mentioned plans to bring my mom over for the weekend. Uncertain of how to respond, I remained silent, and he departed shortly after. Later that day, I approached John, expressing my reluctance to meet my biological parents, who had disowned me for being a boy. I harbored memories of a distressing childhood and contemplated running away for the weekend. Mary insisted on forgiveness and moving forward, urging me to meet them. Reluctantly, I agreed, setting the condition that Mary and John be present during the encounter. On the arranged weekend, my biological parents arrived at John's house. Instead of an apology, they displayed no remorse, focusing on counting the favors they believed they had bestowed upon me. My mother asserted that I should be thankful for finding good parents in John and Mary, who had raised me to be successful. Despite my inner turmoil, Mary's reassuring hand gesture prompted me to diplomatically express gratitude for having them as my parents. The meeting felt awkward, leaving me unsettled. The next day, a call from my mother, whose voice I hadn't recognized in 2 decades, unveiled a demand for money. She explained their financial struggles, detailing Dad's job loss and her own challenges in securing employment as a 50-year-old waitress. Facing mounting pressure from friends to repay borrowed money, she sought $20,000 to cover essential expenses. Though I promised to consider it, doubts lingered about their sincerity. Despite my reservations and conflicted feelings, I eventually discussed the situation with Mary and John. While Mary expressed happiness at my willingness to help, she advised caution. John, sharing my concerns, feared potential emotional exploitation. After much contemplation, I decided to take a gamble and transfer the money to her account, hoping to assist my family in need. Contrary to my initial sense of accomplishment, a week later, my mother called again, leaving me with mixed feelings about their intentions and the financial help I provided. She expressed her gratitude for the assistance and then mentioned that my sisters were eager to meet me. In that moment, I sensed a genuine desire for my family to reconnect. Despite the wrongs my parents had committed during my childhood, I harbored no ill feelings towards my sisters. As a small child, I may have done some mischievous things, but as I grew up, I never held them responsible. I even entertained the thought that my parents might have let me go due to financial struggles rather than malice. When Mom suggested meeting on the upcoming Sunday and I offered to drive home, she proposed an alternative, meeting somewhere outside. I agreed without dwelling too much on it. After the call, a sense of uneasiness lingered. Why didn't she want me to visit home? Meeting family after so many years? Wouldn't it be more natural to call them home instead of opting for a restaurant? Nevertheless, she sent me the details of the restaurant, and it turned out to be one of the fanciest in town. At that moment, my focus was on the fact that they didn't invite me home. I joined them at the restaurant, and the reunion with my sisters brought a momentary sense of happiness. However, when the menu arrived, they began ordering the priciest items, seeking the most expensive dishes. When my father remarked, "Order the most expensive one. My son is a big man now," it felt mean-spirited and wicked. As they indulged in the lavish feast, I found myself footing the bill, a situation that left me contemplating wild thoughts like ghosting them before settling it. However, that seemed too severe. I resolved not to fall into their emotional trap again, sitting coldly through the rest of the evening. They didn't seem to notice my detachment. As they left, there was no invitation to visit home. Instead, my elder sister inquired about the next dining destination. I faked a smile, bid them goodbye, and returned home to share my experience with Mary. Mary, a kind and independent woman, found their behavior disturbing. She advised me not to be a fool, not to dwell on them, and to focus on my own life. I heeded her counsel, not responding to my sisters or mother when they called. After 2 months of silence, it appeared they got the hint that I didn't want them in my life. In the subsequent update, I acknowledged the support and shared my decision to stop responding to my sisters and biological parents, realizing they seemed interested only in money. However, after 5 months, my mother called again, attempting small talk that felt fake and insincere. When she eventually disclosed that my sisters had to drop out of college due to financial struggles and asked me to fund their education, I couldn't contain my frustration. Despite her plea for help, I remained firm in my decision to distance myself from their intentions. I was at work during that call and wanted to keep a clear head, so I decided to hang up. However, she persisted, calling again in the evening. Initially ignoring her calls, I realized that avoidance wasn't the solution. The next time she called, I answered. She immediately delved into discussing my sister's eagerness to rejoin college and inquired about my payment plan, whether in a lump sum or semester-wise. She suggested transferring the entire amount to her, and she would handle the tuition before each semester. I interrupted her, expressing my reluctance to make any payments. To her surprise, I firmly stated that I had no intention of contributing. She inquired about the refusal, suggesting installment payments, but I reiterated my stance, emphasizing that my elder sister's education wasn't my responsibility, particularly given my parents' abandonment. I pointed out the opportunistic nature of their sudden interest in me due to my financial standing. This incited her anger, and she retorted that I owed them for bringing me into the world, asserting my duty to care for them. Although I had much to say, my words fell on deaf, narcissistic ears. I acknowledged my gratitude to my actual parents, John and Mary, who had earned the titles of mom and dad through their love and care. In contrast, my biological parents had no place in my life. They had discarded me at the age of 6. As she hurled abuses, I simply responded with the wrong number and hung up. Regardless of how I may be labeled, I refused to squander my hard-earned money on a so-called family that had abandoned me. Addressing a comment from the previous updates about calling John and Mary by their names instead of mom and dad, I clarified that I indeed refer to them as mom and dad. The usage of names in the narrative was for the sake of storytelling. John and Mary, my true parents, held a special place in my heart. As for my biological parents, they didn't exist for me. Moving on to the next story, I discovered my wife's infidelity with someone she met at a convention. We had shared a love for all things nerdy, bonded over gaming, anime, and conventions. However, despite our seemingly strong connection, I unearthed her betrayal and took decisive action. 5 years into our marriage, the foundation we had built on mutual interests and passions seemed solid. We both reveled in nerdy activities, from gaming to discussing the latest chapters of manga like Legend of Zelda and One Piece. Our love for each other grew rapidly, leading to a fast-tracked marriage. Our wedding, brimming with nerdy charm, celebrated our shared interests. Due to work constraints and financial considerations, attending conventions had become a rare occurrence for us. Wanting to make our 5-year anniversary special, I decided to surprise her with tickets to a renowned Comic-Con. It was a dream event for many enthusiasts, and her joy upon receiving the surprise was palpable. However, this seemingly idyllic scenario took an unexpected turn. I always struggled to gauge women's interest, often realizing it only in hindsight. This pattern persisted even with my wife, as it took 3 extensive conversations on Discord for me to grasp her feelings and desire to know me better. When we attended a convention together, things seemed enjoyable. A woman dressed as slave Princess Leia complimented my stormtrooper costume, which I hastily put together. Unaware of her advances, my wife, noticing the attention, expressed her frustration at my obliviousness. As the convention unfolded, we joined a meetup where a guy, dressed as Han Solo, engaged in conversation with my wife, also portraying Princess Leia. Their interaction intensified, causing me to step in and mention my role as the husband. Although he acknowledged me politely, he avoided eye contact. Confronting my wife later, she insisted there was nothing amiss, attributing his friendliness to a shared interest in Star Wars. Believing her, I brushed off the incident. The next day, my wife fell ill, prompting me to leave and return later with a gift. However, she grew distant, responding minimally to messages. Concerned, I approached our room, hearing unsettling sounds upon arrival. Dismissing it as my wife's activities, I entered to find her seemingly guilty. Confronting her revealed nothing, and I chose to overlook the incident. The convention ended, but our relationship strained. She worked longer hours, became distant, and avoided spending time together. Suspicious, I noticed her Discord notifications were off, a deviation from our usual communication. Curiosity led me to check her phone, discovering messages from the guy she met at the Star Wars meetup. The exchange involved flirtatious messages, photo sharing, and even discussions about role-playing. Suppressing my anger, I pretended ignorance when she inquired about my well-being. Internally seething, I decided to research divorce options, contemplating a way to expose her betrayal and make her aware of my knowledge. I informed her about an upcoming convention, explaining that I couldn't attend but she was welcome to go. Despite the excitement in her eyes, the realization hit me: my partner, the person I wanted to spend my life with, had discarded me. It was a devastating blow, but I concealed my emotions. On the day of the convention, I executed my plan after researching the guy she had been closely working with. Wearing a mask to conceal my identity, I located them right in front of her favorite voice actors. Observing them closely, I watched as they got in line. When they approached the voice actors, she pulled the man closer, sharing a kiss. That's when I intervened, removing the mask and confronting her. She questioned my actions, and I accused her of cheating with him, presenting the Discord messages as evidence. The onlookers were shocked by the public confrontation, but I refused to let it go. I publicly declared her as a cheater, exposing her affair with the guy she had met at a convention. The celebrity present decided to take a break and left the scene, leaving my wife in tears, pleading for understanding. However, I remained resolute, citing her lies about going alone and uncovering her secret meetings and late nights at the office. Seeking solace in my decision, I refused to listen to her explanations. Upon returning home, I gathered my belongings, stayed at a hotel, and initiated contact with an attorney for divorce proceedings. Despite her attempts to convince me to embrace an open relationship, I remained steadfast in wanting only her. My actions gained attention on social media as someone recorded and shared the embarrassing confrontation. Proceeding with the divorce, I obtained the house and belongings, eventually selling them to escape the painful memories. Uninterested in her fate, the nerd community widely discussed the incident, creating a significant buzz on platforms like Twitter. Her boss eventually discovered the situation, but my focus shifted towards my ongoing quest for love, steering clear of a relationship with a cheating partner like her.